Before we get into it, just a heads up that today's episode discusses distressing themes. Listener discretion is advised. Hello and welcome to the Daily Aus. I'm Emma Gillespie.
I'm Billi FitzSimons.
Books by popular Australian author Craig Silvey have been pulled from shelves in Western Australian schools after the 43-year-old author was charged with child exploitation. Several of Silvey's books, including Runt and Jasper Jones, are studied by students in schools around the country. But following a raid on his home on Monday, the WA Education Minister has ordered state schools not to use texts by the author in classrooms this year, while the allegations against him are investigated. Today, we'll explain who Craig Silvey is, the charges against him, and how schools are responding.
Emma, do you want to start by just explaining who Craig Silvey is?
Yeah, he is one of Australia's most prominent authors. If you haven't heard of him, there is a good chance you've read one of his books or heard of one of his books or watched it in a film adaptation. So we're talking about critically acclaimed titles like Rhubarb, Runt, Jasper Jones and Honeybee. Craig Silvey has won multiple awards for those books, both here in Australia and overseas. And his book Runt was turned into a movie just in 2024 of the same name. And his 2009 book Jasper Jones was also made into a film and stage production.
He is such a popular author in Australia. A few of us in the office all studied Jasper Jones at school, which I know we'll get into because it is a very popular book in the education system.
Absolutely.
And so the reason we're talking about him is because he was arrested this week. So what was he arrested for?
Yeah, on Tuesday afternoon, we learned from WA police that a 43-year-old man had been arrested in Fremantle on Monday. We now know that man is the author Craig Silvey. During a raid of his home on Monday, police allege Silvey was caught engaging with child exploitation offenders online.
And so just to be clear, police are saying that when they raided his home, he was mid some form of child exploitation. So he was kind of, they're saying, allegedly caught in the act.
Yeah, that is what the allegations say at the moment. In a statement, WA police said that he was immediately arrested and his electronic devices were seized. Silvey was allegedly talking to someone online, and during that conversation, he expressed a sexual interest in children, according to police. Investigators also claim that there was evidence of image sharing in that conversation. So following the raid on his home, Silvey was charged with possessing and distributing child exploitation material between January 7 and January 9.
So this all relates to child exploitation material. Do you want to just explain what that means?
Yeah, so in Western Australia, where Silvey was arrested and where he'll face court, child exploitation material refers to any material, including images, video, writings, or data that depicts or describes a person who is under 16 in a sexual context or being subjected to abuse or cruelty. So again, there is a lot we don't know about the specifics of the charges against Silvey. So he's been charged with possessing and distributing this type of material. Distribution is a more serious charge, it should be noted.
Okay, so he was arrested and charged earlier this week. When this story first broke, there was a lot that we didn't know, but now there's been more time. We have learnt a little bit more about these allegations in the days since, right?
Yes. So we know now that Silvey appeared in the Fremantle Magistrates Court on Tuesday. No pleas were entered during that hearing, but the ABC did have a reporter inside the courtroom at the time, and according to their report, the police prosecutor told the court that Silvey was not cooperating with investigators. Police are alleging the author refused to grant detectives access to his devices, so that included his mobile phone and computer. And as a result of this alleged non-compliance, police opposed bail for Silvey. So they told the court they did not believe that he should be released from police custody. The prosecutor, again according to the ABC, said Silvey, quote, may hinder the investigation and described him as a flight risk. Now, that means police are concerned that if he's released from custody, he might flee the state or the country as he awaits further proceedings.
Which would be illegal.
Yes.
So was Silvey in the end granted bail?
Hi, I'm Zara. I'm the co-founder of the Daily Aus, and we started this company because we think news can be done differently. If you agree, you can hit subscribe. It's the best way to help us grow. Now, back to the video.
He actually was granted bail despite the wishes of the police prosecutors, but interestingly, he did spend Tuesday night in police custody after being granted bail, and that was because he didn't meet his bail conditions. Silvey was granted bail with something called a surety, as well as a personal undertaking. Now, that means he was ordered to put forward $100,000 of his own money to secure bail, but he also needed a $100,000 surety, meaning someone else needed to put forward money, basically vouching for Silvey. Now, the court defines this surety as a person who enters into a legally enforceable agreement to forfeit a specific amount of money, in this case $100,000, if the person they are standing surety for, in this case Silvey, fails to appear at court. So if for whatever reason the accused breaches bail conditions, they leave the state or country, they miss a hearing, that surety amount gets forfeited. Now, at the time of recording, it's not clear if Silvey is still in custody, but we know that he could not meet those conditions on Tuesday night.
Okay, and you mentioned that we don't yet know how Silvey will plead to these charges. Sometimes in these cases, we would hear from a lawyer on whether or not they are claiming to be innocent or not. We haven't heard anything, right?
At the time of recording, that's right. We haven't heard anything. We don't know how Silvey will plead. And of course, it should be noted this is an ongoing investigation, and Silvey does have a legal right to presumed innocence and a fair trial. That means that for him to be found guilty, the prosecution must prove the charges against him beyond reasonable doubt. That will matter if he pleads not guilty. It'll be a different situation if he pleads guilty.
And what I said before about many of his books are very popular in Australia's education system.
Yeah.
And I know the WA Department of Education has weighed in on Silvey's arrest. What did they say?
Yeah, this is a really interesting aspect of this story and quite an unusual one. The core texts or recommended texts that students study in high schools and primary schools across the country is determined on a state-by-state basis. But in WA, at least, we do know that Silvey's books are included in the curriculums of some of its subjects for some students. Now, the Daily Aus did reach out to the education minister there, Sabine Winton, and she called the nature of the allegations against Silvey deeply concerning. Winton confirmed that Jasper Jones and Rhubarb, two books by Craig Silvey that are included in a list of texts that students might study in Year 11 and 12 literature or in general English courses, that they would be removed this year for study. So in light of the charges against the writer, Winton has asked the Department of Education to, quote, ensure that schools cease using texts by Craig Silvey for the 2026 school year while the allegations are under investigation. Now, there are some Year 12 students in WA who may have already studied Silvey's books in previous years for literature studies. The Education Minister confirmed they will not be penalised if they refer to those texts in their exams later this year.
Do we know if any other states will follow suit?
Well, I did look into this on Wednesday morning, and Runt, which is a very famous book by Craig Silvey, was included as a level 4 English core text in Victoria. But when I checked the list again a few hours later on Wednesday afternoon, Runt had actually been removed from that document.
Okay, so what are the next steps here? I presume there's a trial that will happen.
Well, Silvey is scheduled to appear in court next on the 10th of February. So we've got to wait a couple more weeks till we learn more about the future of this case. We have heard from his publisher, Allen and Unwin. It said it was aware of the allegations, which it called deeply distressing, and said the publishing house would pause promotional activity of Silvey's work while the legal process takes its course. I did have a quick browse online across a few major book retailers. So some retailers, including Dymocks and QBD Books, have actually removed Silvey's titles from their websites. Now, in terms of the penalties that Silvey's facing for these child exploitation charges, in WA specifically, a person found guilty of possession of child exploitation material could face 7 to 10 years behind bars, and distributing child exploitation material carries a penalty of 10 years jail time. Silvey, we know, is facing 2 counts, so that could mean a longer penalty or that those sentences are stacked if he is found guilty. And the magistrate who granted him bail did say that imprisonment is a likely outcome. But investigations are continuing. We will continue to keep you guys updated as we learn more about this case.
Yeah, a very disturbing case. And it's something you never expect to read about such a popular author. Emma, thank you for taking us through that.
Thank you, Billi.
And thank you for listening to today's episode. If it has raised any issues with you, help is available. You can call Lifeline on 13 11 14 or the Kids Helpline on 1800 55 1800. We'll be back with your evening news headlines a little later on, but until then, have a good day.